And it'll start recording.
Hello, everyone. We're going to give us a couple of minutes to let our watch parties and our different trilogy communities, if you're with your local lifestyle team or watching at home, we're going to give people a couple of moments to get into the webinar so we can make sure everyone's here. But thank you to everyone who's here already for joining us. We're excited to have you. And it's Thursday.
We're at 16, Paula.
Awesome.
You probably can see the names if you click attendees on in the panel, maybe.
I can only see us. That's good. We're fun.
Okay. We have a little different view then.
Oh, wait, no, I can. Carol. Hi, Carol. She's coming live from Tahale. Todd hosting a watch party and trilogy for Tara. I'm sorry, for Tara, a trilogy boutique community. Welcome. But people are still hopping on, so we'll give just a couple minutes. Thank you to everyone who's here so far. Waiting for my local team to hop on. I'm gonna have to text them.
I would imagine Zoom has let everybody in by now.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started, Teresa.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So for those of you that I don't know, my name is Paula Rowe. I'm the club manager at Seven Summits Lodge at Trilogy at Tahale. I was very honored that Sarah asked me to help out for today's. She's on a trip, very good for her. But I'm very happy to assist. I was formerly in lifestyle and very, very happy to be a part of it for the day. So thank you all for having me. And again, welcome to everyone, whether you're watching at a watch party at your clubhouse, whether you're watching a recording or you're watching at your home. We're very glad that you found us. This is a very important topic, and I'm very happy that we have so many people joining us. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I do want to make sure that everyone knows that this presentation is being recorded. It will be posted to my Trilogy Life in a couple of days. So if you're working or you're talking with neighbors about it, or you know somebody in the community who you think would benefit from it, you can always go to MTL and find that post there. I will be going on mute in a couple of moments, but I will be watching the chat box. So if you are at a watch party or watching from home and you have questions or comments, please feel free to type them in the box. And when Teresa's done with her presentation, we'll do a Q&A. We anticipate the presentation to last about 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions, and we'll start with those from the chat box, and then others can ask as well. So without further, we're very, very excited to welcome Teresa. We've just been chatting a couple minutes and I already adore her. So we're in for a treat. So last year, Teresa was part of our keynote speaker series. You can find that recording on my Trilogy Life if you want to reference it from last year. We received such positive feedback, and we know it's a very sensitive topic and a very important one. So we wanted to make sure that we welcomed her back to provide this amenity for our membership. Teresa is a master's of public health. She is a best-selling author, a podcaster, a widow, and a certified professional life coach. I'm honored to be able to help facilitate this with you. And without further ado, Teresa, I will let you take it.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm very happy to be here back with you all to talk about grief. Such a fun topic. Not really, right? It's not a fun topic, but it's an important topic. And I'm thrilled to be back with all of you. So today we're talking about the weight of loss, how grief affects brain, body, and spirit, and how to help. I want to welcome you if you are grieving. I want to welcome you if you want to better support someone who is grieving. I myself, as Paula shared, am a widowed person, and in my work, I support widowed people through coaching. So you will hear that lens specific to widowhood, although people have read my book and felt it was applicable to different kinds of losses. So I certainly hope that no matter what kind of loss you're grieving, that you feel the topic today is relevant and hopefully very, very helpful for you. This is my sweet Ted. He was larger than life. My late husband. We were celebrating our wedding anniversary in Lake Tahoe and came down to Carson City to have lunch. And his heart stopped beating over lunch. And despite my best efforts and that of first responders and emergency room personnel, it was not to be. So it was extremely sudden for me to lose Ted. And like I'm sure many people listening can relate, every single thing changed. And that's certainly true for many, if not every, widowed person. I think grief is a bit like air. It's everywhere and it's hidden. It's so often quite invisible. So I wanted to bring some statistics today. The number of people widowed daily in the US alone, 2,800 people widowed just today and again tomorrow. So it is everywhere. The average age of a widowed person is 59, quite a bit younger than we might think and expect. The percentage of women who become widowed by the age of 65, 50%. And the percent of Americans who've experienced a major loss in the past 3 years, 57%. Grief is truly everywhere. And yet, it's taboo, which can make it so isolating to be a grieving person. And we rarely think of it as a public health issue, and yet it impacts brain, body, spirit, social connections, and really so much more. It's just a fraction here that we're mentioning. It is taboo. It has a massive impact. It's extremely prevalent, and yet it's taboo somehow. And it is hard. Grief is hard, but it doesn't have to be 1 ounce harder than absolutely necessary. And that is the work that I do. And the reason I'm here with you, and the reason I really honestly love to talk about grief, because we can't bring the person back, but there's so much else we can do to help ourselves. There are practical tools and simple strategies to employ to help yourself if you are a grieving person, and also to better support a grieving person, right? It's not time that heals, friends. It is not time that heals. It is being very intentional over time that heals. And I hope that I can explain today what I mean by that: being intentional, practicing intentionality over time. That is what heals. The truth about grief is that what looks like strength rarely feels strong. And no doubt, before I lost my late husband, I looked at people who were grieving and thought, gosh, you're so strong. I probably said it too. You're so strong. in my innocence, well intended. But the truth is, we never feel strong. It feels anything but strong. And what looks resilient doesn't feel resilient at all. The truth is that grief is gritty and it's messy and it is unique. And also, there are some universal qualities to it. There are so many myths about grief that we hold in our society. And I'm glad to hear from Paula that last year's presentation is still available because I tackled the grief myths and truths. And I hope if that is of interest to you, that you'll go back and watch the replay. And there are myths, maybe partly because there's no owner's manual, there's no rule book. There are no categories that are not linear for sure. There is no stages of grief for grieving people. It was never intended for grieving people. There are no boxes to check. Okay. And it would be nice if there were those things, but grief is too unique. Relationships are too unique, right? To have such neat and tidy categories and a way to process it. The number one thing that I want you to know if you're a grieving person, and the number one thing I want you to know if you're supporting a grieving person is, as a grieving person, you are not your former self. Grief is that catastrophic. Your person died, which obviously changed them, but it's so catastrophic that it changed you too. And I say that because it can be very easy for us to be kicking ourselves and be impatiently waiting for our former self to reemerge. And the truth is, grief changes us. We are not our former self. Okay, so what do people tend to say? What no doubt did I say to grieving people before I knew? In my innocence, I'm sure that I said, "You're so strong." And no doubt I said, "How are you? Just call if you need anything." And I know just how you feel. I'm sure I said every bit of that. It's so common. If you're a grieving person, you have no doubt heard those. You may cringe at every one of them. And so if maybe you're here and you're wanting to support a grieving person, it's understandable that we say these things from the goodness of our hearts. There are little better things that we can say. And that's what I want to offer you today is some how to help slides here. You're so strong, surprisingly, isn't a compliment because it makes a grieving person feel unseen and misunderstood because they feel anything but strong. They feel the messy grittiness of grief. What can we say instead? What's this been like for you? What has today been like for you? Right? We want to be curious. And I'm going to talk about curiosity because it's a really important feeling for grieving people and for people who love grieving people. Curiosity is the most important feeling. Okay, so instead of deciding that they look strong, we can assume that we have no idea how they actually are. And if you're close enough with this person, say, "What's this been like for you?" Right? Just be really curious. How are you? Seems like such an innocent and normal question. To a grieving person, it can be very tough to answer because give me a timestamp, right? If my husband died 3 years ago, I've been a million things. I don't know how to answer this question, right? So it really helps to clarify, how has today been for you? How has this week been? Now I can answer the question because I can tell you how today has been. If you're a grieving person and you're navigating this "how are you" question, like, what do you say? One possibility is, "I'm doing my best every day, and every day that looks different," right? "You're so strong." What can we say as a grieving person? "Actually, it's messier than it looks. This is the hardest thing I've ever done." Right? If you have a close relationship with that person, being as authentic as you can be may help you feel more seen and more understood. I'm happy to take questions, as Paula said. Feel free to pop them in the chat. We, out of the goodness of our hearts, will say, "Just call if you need anything." And as a grieving person, I don't know what I need, right? Everything in my world just changed. I have no idea what I need. And so if you want to better support a grieving person, ask for a specific thing. Can I get your mail for you? Can I roll the trash cans out for you or bring them back for you? And if you know the couple well enough, you may know that the spouse or the person who passed has certain skills that the other spouse doesn't have. So can you offer to fill in, in that area perhaps? So ask with specific questions. Call if you need anything isn't as helpful as what specifically can I help you with today, right? Um, can I bring you food? Are you eating? Right? Really specific questions. We are so tempted to say, I know just how you feel. We had a driver driving the family car to my husband's funeral, to the cemetery part specifically. And the driver, who happened to be sitting closest to, was telling me about his mother's passing. Like, I had no capacity to hear about anyone else's grief as we were pulling up to the cemetery. But it was a good introduction for me about how our society tends to, I think it's well intentioned to demonstrate empathy, to say, I know just how you feel. It is not helpful at all. Because number one, we never know how another person feels. I coach widowed people. I don't know how another widowed person feels, even though I am a widowed person. We are so unique. Every relationship is so unique. So we can never know just how you feel. So please, please, if you're trying to support a grieving person, right, let's not use that sentence. It also can be a way of hijacking the conversation and shifting the focus back onto yourself, taking the focus away from the grieving person and on to yourself. That is not helpful at all. So we don't want to make any comparisons. It's not just like when your anyone died. And people will even say it's just like when my dog died. And I am a dog lover. Paul is a dog lover. Um, and the passing of any pet is absolutely horrible, and it's also unique. It is not like any other thing. So just be really, really careful with the I know just how you feel. There's no such thing as grief Olympics. Like, we are not competing for who has the worst grief. It's all bad. As my dear friend says, the grass is always browner. No matter who you're talking to who is grieving, right? The grass is always browner. How to help yourself. Don't expect your former self to reemerge. They're not coming back. They're not coming back. So be kind to yourself. Don't kick yourself expecting former you with the former skills and the former motivation, right? Not coming back. Not coming back. Curious observation is truly the most useful approach. If kicking yourself were the best way forward, I would be teaching a masterclass. That would be the title of this presentation: How to Be Tougher on Yourself to Get Through Grief. That is actually a way to stay stuck. And being curious and gentle and kind and being observational is the most useful approach, I promise you. Okay? And how to help a grieving person. Don't expect their former self to reemerge. They're not going to. Don't fall for the myths that our society is so bought into. Don't compare your grief to theirs. It's not the same. They're unique. Never assume that you know what it's like for them. And for you too, curiosity is the most useful approach. Be curious, right? Grieving is learning. Grieving is learning. No one tells us this. But when we lose someone who is significant in our life, certainly if you've lost a spouse and no doubt other really significant losses, you have to relearn who you are now. Now, there's a future you, but we don't know that person yet. What we've got is this version of you, and we don't know much about them, right? So we have to learn who we are now. We have to learn how our brain works these days. It'll work better in the future. But we have to learn how it's working these days, which is different. And I'm going to talk about that next. We have to learn our body. Grief impacts our body in multiple ways. So it's like, how is my body navigating this? In what ways is grief impacting my body? Is it impacting certain parts of my body more than others? What does self care look like? It doesn't look like it ever did before, friends. Self care looks different now. It's probably going to need to be an unprecedented form of self-care, and it will look entirely different. And my hope for you is that you won't delay it, that you won't put it off, that you will prioritize it. I think your body and brain and spirit is going to demand it like never before. Your spirit is impacted, and we have to learn how we're doing spiritually now. It's probably very different, and friendships, relationships change. This is among many secondary losses, and I'll talk about that today too. But the task at hand, if you're a grieving person, is learning. Grieving is learning. It's so, so important. And when we think about curiosity and self criticism, because it's interesting, self criticism is where we all want to go. If you are grieving, we very quickly want to be kicking ourselves, telling ourselves that we're doing it wrong. Because remember, there's no owner's manual, there's no rule book. So we just decide we're doing it wrong. And when we are in a place of self criticism, we cannot learn, cannot be curious. Those have an inverse relationship, right? So staying critical, being hard on ourselves, deciding that we're doing it wrong will lock us out of the learning that is grieving. It will keep us stuck in a spin cycle of suffering versus like flipping that. If we're being curious, then we're not being self critical, right? And curiosity is a really useful feeling to help us navigate the grief journey. So just notice, am I being self critical, or am I in a state of curious observation? Right? Self criticism says I should be better by now. By 3 years, I should be dot, dot, dot. I shouldn't be crying by 8:30 in the morning, whatever it is, right? We want to get good at eavesdropping on our own thinking, which most of us aren't that great at. We want to get better at eavesdropping on our own thinking and asking ourselves, wow, is that what I would say to any other person? Often it isn't. And when we hear ourselves being self critical, can we shift that into curiosity, which sounds like, oh, interesting, 9 o'clock, and I'm crying. This is what we've got today, right? That's interesting. What can I learn from this? Maybe I didn't sleep well last night, which is so common too with grief. Like, or maybe this circumstance that happened was extra hard on me and I didn't see it coming. Maybe a secondary loss kind of punched me in the gut yesterday and I did not see that coming, right? The primary loss is the loss of your loved one. The secondary losses is like the fallout is one way to describe it. All of what that means. Secondary losses pile up. Some of them we can see coming, some of them we can't. They are the reason that grief is cumulative, right? It doesn't end in the first year, as we are somewhat conditioned to think. Okay, grief's impact on the brain is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I love the book. Okay, I'm going to cite the book in a second here. I love the book, The Grieving Brain, Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. And if you're super hard on yourself, it may help to read the book. But I've pulled out what I think are really profound quotes here from that book. Here's one: grief is a heart wrenchingly painful problem for the brain to solve. And grieving necessitates learning to live in the world with the absence of someone you love deeply, who is ingrained in your understanding of the world. Who is ingrained in your understanding of the world. Your brain understands the world with your person physically in it, right? Continuing, this means that for the brain, your loved one is simultaneously gone and also everlasting, and you are walking through two worlds at the same time. This continues. You're navigating your life despite the fact that they have been stolen from you, a premise that makes no sense, and that is both confusing and upsetting. Okay, The Grieving Brain by Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. It's a great book. Oh, I couldn't stop. Here's another part. The idea that a person simply does not exist anymore does not follow the rules the brain has learned over a lifetime. I think those are really profound sentences from that book. To really summarize quickly, grieving brains are detectable on functional MRI. Isn't that wild? I remember thinking after I lost Ted and my brain wouldn't work. I couldn't read a 3 sentence paragraph. I would get to the third sentence and I have no idea what I had just read. Consistently for weeks and months, I functioned at my job much lower than my pay grade, right? I needed to be sweeping the floor. I probably could have done that well. Um, but my brain didn't work and I couldn't make it work. And I remember thinking, is this what it's like to have a stroke? Like, your brain isn't working and you can't make it work. That was before I knew any of this, but indeed, a grieving brain is detectable on functional MRI. It does not function the way that it once did. It gets better. There's a future brain that does function well, but for now, this is what we've got. It has to rewire itself to understand the world without your person's physical presence. That is no small job, and it does not happen overnight. So our brains, they argue with the reality. We do, meaning they should be here. This shouldn't have happened. Why him? Why us? Why are serial killers walking around and my person isn't? Right? This shouldn't be. And then we face graduations and weddings and all the events this time of year. As we record this, it's late May, and we say this our person should be here. They should not be missing this. So those are all forms of arguing with reality. Another form of it is I should be doing better by now, arguing with reality. So our brains do that. Our brains offer counterfactual thinking, meaning if only X, then Y, right? I thought, well, if only I had done this, then maybe I could have been able to save him. So in those little moments, our brains are searching for a little split second of control. So even though it's fantasy, we're thinking, well, if only I had done this, then that. If only I had noticed this, then I could have saved him. I could have changed the outcome. So our brains will spin out in what we call counterfactual thinking. And that's normal and it's okay. And it's also a big energy drain. Um, and this is one is really important. If you lived with your person who passed, you will expect them to come home. You will be listening for the front door or the garage door. And that's not just for the first year, friends. That continues as our brain rewires itself, which, as we said, is a slow process and takes lots of new lived experiences. So please don't be hard on yourself when you pick up your phone to text your person who's been gone for a year and a half, right? Or pick up your phone to call them or listen or look for them in a crowd. Normal, normal, normal. Please do not make it mean that you are not doing this right. It is normal brain behavior. Okay? So, how do you help yourself? Grieving brains don't work well. They are foggy, they are forgetful. You find your keys in the pantry and you find other things in the refrigerator that don't belong, and you drive off with your wallet on the top of your car, that you name it, right? We do all of this. So brains are very foggy. Don't make it mean more than it means. It's grief. I was 39. My brain did every bit of it and more. So if don't make it mean that you have dementia, it's the beginning of the end. No, no, no. Grief is that catastrophic. Like, look around your life, look at your own brain and say, it's this hard to live without my person. It's this hard, right? It's not forever. Kicking yourself makes it worse. I know because I tried it and it doesn't work, right? So we don't want to make it mean more than it does. It's just for now. And can we, for now, be patient and curious and observe how our brain does work? And then can we get really practical about how to help it, right? Because if you had a stroke, let's say, now you have the brain that you have, you know you're going to heal it the best you can, but how do you help it in the meantime? So that means leaving notes. I used to leave myself notes at work. Here's what I got done on this project. Here's the very next thing I need to figure out. Here's the link to find it. This is the immediate next step, so that when I went back to that project, I didn't have to reorient my brain from scratch, because that's what it would have been. I could pick up on my notes and it would help, right? So little practical systems and tools and tricks to support our brain for now is what we need. It will get better. But the more we can help ourselves now, the more we'll help ourselves now. How to help a grieving person? Know that grief impacts the brain. If you're curious for lots of detail and research, read the book The Grieving Brain by Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, because you will understand your person who is grieving so much more. Lower your expectations of your grieving loved one. They will not be able to cognitively perform the way that they once did. They will be forgetful. And ask how you can support. Is there anything I can do to support you? Can I pick up the phone and call you and remind you? Right? Little things like that. Okay, how about this? Grief's impact on the body. Grief impacts the heart. We've probably all heard of broken heart syndrome. It also impacts the immune system, the endocrine system, the liver, the lungs, and the nervous system. Same author here, Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, this year came out with her new book called The Grieving Body. So helpful. Heart attack 21 times more likely in the first 24 hours after the death of a loved one compared to any other day in life. There are increased rates of cancer, that being lung, stomach, and breast cancer, and respiratory diseases. We're more susceptible to pneumonia, influenza, and increased inflammation after the death of a loved one. And also, that's from the grief, right? But then we try to cope, and our coping strategies may or may not be healthy, right? And so then our coping strategies can impact our health too, meaning just a few examples: over drinking, overeating, drug use, right? Those can impact too. And so many, overspending, right? Which impacts your finances, which can create extra stress. Any kind of overing behavior has its own negative consequence, which probably impacts your health too. Okay. Over scrolling, binge watching, right? Netflixing, whatever overing behavior. Okay. They all have their own consequence. And what are we doing? We're trying to avoid the pain, just even for the moment. And it's so normal, because our primitive brains are hardwired to avoid pain. So it makes perfect sense. Another one that might be really relevant for folks here listening is staying overly busy. That was my preferred strategy, to try to outrun it, out hustle it, outwork it. And if you're living in a wonderful community that has lots of enriching and fun things to do, right? You might be really active, but it's really active stagnation, right? Because you're on a treadmill trying to outrun it. And one example of that, I spoke to a woman one time. This was well into the pandemic, so maybe 2021, 2022. And she had lost her husband. I didn't know how long ago. She was very teary during our entire 45-minute conversation, which isn't all that unusual. Um, she told me toward the end that he had died 25 years prior. Well, she was working, loved her job. She moved to a great community with lots of wonderful, enriching lifestyles options. She enjoyed all of that. She moved to an assisted living community, same thing, lots of enrichment to enjoy and participate in. And then the pandemic ultimately locked her in her room, and grief was there. Grief was waiting for her. Feelings need to be tended, they need to be felt, they will wait, right? And as they wait, they get harder, they compound, right? So we can't outrun this. I know, because I tried. We cannot outrun it. How to help yourself. I don't share those the impact on the body to scare you. Certainly don't mean to scare you at all. I do share it to encourage you. The risk is still relatively low for all of those things. But I share it to encourage you to catch up on medical screenings, especially if you have been a caregiver. You may have quite naturally postponed your own health, your own appointments, your own screenings. So, even though grief is hard and you probably could care less about getting your appointments taken care of, it's a really important time to do that. Also, reconsidering, what does self care look like now, right? Being selfish says it's all about me and to heck with anyone else. And self-care says I'm going to take really good care of me and then I'll be a better version of me for the people who I love. Right? So self-care after a profound loss looks different. Our brains and bodies and spirits really quite frankly demand it. And if we can be very curious, what do I need now? What is my bandwidth now? What can I say yes to? What do I want to say no to simply because I don't have an ounce of energy? Right? What do you need to do? I like to think of 3 battery packs. This is just in my own brain, but I share it in case it's useful to you. My brain as its own battery pack, my body, and my soul. Like 3 separate battery packs that for me, they need to be recharged differently. And is there overlap? Yes, of course, there's overlap. Right. But I do little different things to get recharged, mind, body, and spirit. And sometimes my brain batteries are drained and the other 2 battery packs are okay. Right. So it's very dynamic. I think it's a really useful way to think about self-care. Silence, solitude, nature absolutely recharge my batteries. And I learned that the question for you is what recharges yours? And do you get enough of it? And how do you proactively stay charged? And when you do get low, how do you recharge? It will be different for everybody, but it's such a good question to consider. Okay. And how to help a grieving person stay curious about their needs. What they need early on might not be what they need in 6 months. Avoid drawing conclusions or making your own analysis. Instead, just support them, invite them, ask how you can help, right? Stay curious again. Okay, social connections. Death changes you too, you meaning a grieving person. And friendships change for a lot of reasons. One such reason is that you changed. You as a grieving person changed. And also, maybe your friends are not comfortable with grief. Sometimes I say they don't speak grief, and that's okay. But then they have trouble connecting with you as a grieving person. They don't want to say the wrong thing, so they will end up saying nothing, right? Maybe that. Also, what was once relevant to you is no longer. I remember having so many conversations thinking, I can't relate to this person or this topic like it would have been relevant to me, but now it is completely irrelevant to me. So, like that's just an example of how much grief changes us. And as a grieving person, you have a fraction of the energy you once did. You have maybe no motivation. Social situations can be incredibly challenging for a grieving person. So lots of reasons that friendships change. It's a secondary loss. It's painful. The people, I can't tell you how often I have heard the people who said they would be there for me are missing in action. And the people who I thought and would have bet would absolutely be there for me, I haven't heard from since the funeral. So common. And it's very painful. It's a secondary loss for the grieving person. So if you want to better support a grieving person, be there for them, invite them. And when they say no, and just invite them again, they will probably say no 100 times. Keep inviting them. Stay curious about their needs and their desires. And if, as they enter the second year after their loss, If you're trying to support a grieving person, the second year, lean in, right? Society kind of tells us after the first year, you check the boxes and you're good. No, lean in, support them all the more in the second 12 months, because that is when the brain starts to actually get it. And the grieving person's brain goes, oh, they're really not coming back. Like, I get it now at a deeper level. It's settling into my cells now. Last year, it was surreal. And maybe there was some anesthesia that covered me, although it felt terrible. But this year, I get it. And that's hard. So that is often what's happening in the second 12 months, at least for widowed people. I can't speak for those who have lost a child or lost a parent, but that's certainly true for widowed people. And how to help yourself. Allow yourself to relearn friendships. I know this is the masterclass you did not sign up for, right? Grieving is learning. And by the way, you have to relearn all of your friendships too, because they're not the same as they used to be. I'm the bearer of bad news, but if you can if you can think of it that way, like this me, life after loss, Teresa, doesn't really know her friendship with this person. I have to learn it now. Is it going to be the same? I've changed. Maybe they haven't changed, but so much has, and I have to relearn. We want to pace ourselves. We want to check our energy levels. We don't want to overcommit. And if we do overcommit, we have to unapologetically, change our plans and be willing to let people think whatever they think. We need to allow ourselves to bring friendships to a close or edit them, right? Maybe reducing someone's access to you. Because the truth is, everyone who is in your social circle, friends and family, they benefited from former you in some way, shape, or form. Not because they're a narcissist at all, but there was some mutual benefit. And that might not be true anymore, right? So we need to edit our expectations, edit our friendships, and by all means, find people who get it. By all means, find people who are grief savvy, who get it with no explanation. They are your people, and it will help you tremendously to know them and be with them. There's a quote I can't even give proper credit, but it's something like maybe it's Brene Brown, sit with warriors. The conversation is different. Could be Brene Brown. That's true of this. Get to know grieving people or people who have had profound loss. Okay. What else? How about the spirit? Grief's impact on the spirit. Remember, I said you're not your former self? That is true spiritually, too. Almost every grieving person I've met has gone through some spiritual change, whatever that looks like. Maybe what was once your go to isn't anymore. Maybe you were once a praying person and you cannot utter a sentence, a single word of a prayer. Maybe it deepens your faith. Maybe it questions your faith. Maybe your faith is so shaken. Maybe you're angry. Maybe you can no longer trust the universe, right? Anything can happen here, and it's all okay. A wonderful book is called A Grace Disguised: How the Soul Grows Through Loss. Jerry Sitzer, it's here on my slide. He lost his wife, mother, and daughter in a car accident, drunk driver. And his book walks through his journey, and he wrote it at about the 3-year mark. It's been another 25 years since, and he has an update. But it's, to me, a very profound book, and it may help you. How to help yourself. Allow yourself to be different spiritually. What you have right now is what you have right now. Don't make it wrong. Don't make it mean that you're failing, right? Curious observation. Oh, look, currently these days, spiritually, here's where I am. I don't know a thing. I question everything, right? I feel like I've been wronged, right? It could be anything. Whatever it is, and it's fine. Make it normal. This is the part when you question everything spiritually, and it's okay. This is the part when insert whatever's happening in your spiritual life, and it's okay. This is just this part. Okay. There's a future you again, but what we're doing here is getting to know current you, making current you normal, right? Making it okay. It's this hard to lose someone so significant in your life. It impacts everything, and that is the way of it. Okay, so what we're trying to help you do is not make yourself wrong and not argue against it, because we want to spare that finite energy that you maybe do have. Okay, how to help a grieving person? Curiosity. It won't surprise you to hear me say that at this point. Being curious about how they're doing. If you are close enough to them to have a conversation about their spiritual life, ask them, what's it like? What's happening for you? How can I support you? What is it like for you? Make no assumptions. Okay? Make no assumptions and see how you can help if they want the help. Friends, I always think that the second worst case scenario is to quit living. The worst case scenario happened, and maybe the second worst case scenario is to opt out of life or to choose the waiting room. Another book, one of the only books that helped me um, early in my journey, was called Second First by a woman named Christina Rasmussen. And she talked about the waiting room. It's such a good analogy. Though, waiting rooms in maybe physician offices, they are temperature controlled, they're nicely decorated, they're somewhat comfortable, and we can spend our lives, the rest of our lives, in a waiting room. And that's okay, because it's hard. It's hard. Do you want that for yourself, though? Right? If there's life waiting for you, if you have capacity left in you that's untapped, right? Maybe the second worst case scenario is to decide that this is all there is. And I certainly thought for probably 6 years that, like, if I'm not miserable, then I didn't love him enough. And that is just not true. But it was a story I told myself. Maybe the second worst case scenario is that you think your misery is the only way to honor your person. I certainly believe that myself. And now I know that my joy honors him too. Maybe more, maybe even more. So I understand wanting to opt out and just bide time. I also really hope you don't do it, because I believe that if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. And it's okay if you don't see it right now. It's not for you to know yet. If my fairy godmother had dropped in on my life when I was lost in the darkest darkness and felt I had no purpose, and frankly, I was annoyed that I kept waking up with a pulse. And if my fairy godmother had dropped in my life in that moment and told me what my future would be, I would have rejected it immediately, and it would have put unnecessary pressure on my already debilitated self, right? Sometimes it's too much for us to know. Sometimes what we get to know is just taking the very next step. And that's what I hope to help you do today. My husband and I lived on 10 acres. And when he died, I had to figure out a supplementary income. And this was me putting some of my land, planting some of my land. I wasn't a farmer. I didn't know how to grow these trees. And this looks pretty functional, right? The world would look at her and say, oh, she's doing so good. And I look at that picture and I can feel how I felt, which was scared and annoyed to be still waking up with a pulse, right? And wanting very much to opt out of this life. Not end my life, but not participate in it either. If you've grieved a profound loss, I think you know what I mean by that. But on the surface, it looks like strength, it looks like resilience, and inside it feels like nothing like either of those. And it looks like functioning, doesn't it? People say, well, you're functioning. And really on the inside, this is what functioning looks like, this sink. Technically, it's functioning, right? This is what it feels like on the inside. I bet you can relate. And I had myself very stuck, thinking thoughts like, if I'm not miserable, I didn't love him enough and I should have been able to save him, and a whole lot of other thoughts that kept me stuck in a spin cycle of suffering. And I was just believing my own thoughts. And friends, we can never believe everything we think. We just can't. Our brains are like a jukebox, an unattended jukebox in the corner. It plays songs. That's our brains. Or else we can go up to it and tell it what to play. We humans have that ability to think about what we think about and direct our brains to think true and useful and kind thoughts on purpose. That's what we get to do. And over time, taking small steps, those trees grew. They're about three of me now, and they bloomed and then they produced a crop. And this is me standing on that crop. Normal farmers don't do this, they don't take dorky pictures on the top of their crop. But it was such an important moment for me to see, to go from that place of not really caring about the future to actually living my future. Am I over it? No. Did I get through it? No. Did I figure out how to live within it? Yes. Grief grew. I grew around it, right? And I ache for that man, and I always will. And my life is big and full and beautiful. And I know a joy that I never even knew before. So it's and, right? It's not either or, it's both and my life is full of and now. And I hope that yours can be too. With that, I'm happy to take questions. This is the QR code for my book. And my podcast is free, and you're welcome to give that a listen. If you're watching the replay and you have questions, please do email me. I have a spelling error on my slide, but there's only one S, Teresa at thesuddenwidowcoach.com, and I will be very happy to answer any question that you have.
Teresa, thank you. I was taking lots of notes, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Um, and so many of the things that you said, I think, are so impactful for so many of us, regardless of if we are in a moment of grief or if we're a caregiver, whatever that is. But I think one of my big takeaways was how important it is to be patient with ourselves, because in every aspect of our lives, we can be so quick to judge. And we know, not to judge others, but it's such an important reminder to say, like, okay, let's observe our own thought patterns and
Yes.
be accepting of it and love ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. My other really big takeaway was I've worked with this company for 5 years, and I tell everyone I have fully drank the Trilogy Kool-Aid. And a big part of that is because of how beautiful these communities are. And I can say firsthand, in our community, I've seen either people move in who are widows or who lose their partners once they're here. And to see the community come around people, it's just makes me emotional. It's amazing. So I'm glad that you touched on that. And I know we at Trilogy at Tahale have a grief support group here.
Good.
And so I want to make sure that in your other communities, please reach out to your lifestyle teams and have that connection with people who, even though we don't say I know what you're going through, but who can be in your presence and can relate. And so I really encourage you to reach out to your team and see if you have something similar in your community.
Or you could start something.
Or start something, yes, because it's definitely not just one person.
Absolutely. Are there questions? I'd be happy to answer. I went a little long, longer than I had planned, but if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are you able to see the question and answer too?
Not seeing them right now.
There was a comment.
Oh. Oh, I see it now. Thank you. Hi, Karen. My husband passed away 17 years ago. I kept myself so busy until last year and had to face some of the things I blocked because I kept so busy. I still wonder if I will ever stop grieving. Well, Karen, I don't know if that's a question for me. I'm happy to offer my 2 cents if you're willing to hear it. Facing it is part is such a profound and important milestone, because the more we run, it's like a dog. You know, when a dog chases you and you run, it gets bigger and bolder. And then
Mhm.
you turn and face it and it like shrinks back to proper proportion, and it's like a bit apologetic for acting that way, right? And that's this. So when we can turn and face those feelings and stop resisting them, which takes a whole lot of effort, that feeling is actually a lot smaller and more doable than we could have ever imagined. The fourth episode of my podcast walks us through how to process a difficult emotion, and maybe that can support you. But the way through it is straight through. I spent a lot of years trying to skirt it. There is no such thing, and you know that already. Yeah. Do we ever stop grieving? I don't know that we stop grieving. In my mind, maybe you have a gym in your community, and the day your person passes, it's like going to the gym and there's a 500-pound weight, and someone says, "Congratulations, you're going to be carrying this from now on." And we don't know how to pick it up. We're not strong enough to pick it up. And we don't know the ergonomics of carrying it, right? But if we keep showing up and we keep getting stronger, ultimately that weight, which was once debilitating, is now the equivalent of like a heavy backpack that you might wear hiking. And you can hike a couple miles and hardly even think about it being there. I can go days and weeks and sometimes months without realizing I have a heavy backpack. And then those milestone days come and I know it's there. I don't want to put it down even if I could.
Thank you. And Karen, thank you for sharing that.
On the anniversary of his passing, I choose to celebrate his life. Yes.
Yes.
Wouldn't you want, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would want someone to think about my how I lived so much more than, I mean, I don't really kind of want them to think about how I died at all, but that's part of it. It's natural. But yes, let's think about life. And we get both, right? We feel the uncomfortable feelings, and maybe we can also feel some of the joy too, and those coexist. We call it the duality of life after loss, and allowing them to coexist is so important.
And can be so difficult, but I think that's such an important reminder that two opposites can be true at the same time, and just having to give ourselves permission to experience those things.
Yes, as disorienting as it
Yes.
feels.
Yes.
It still feels disorienting to me, but at least it's familiar. I go, "Oh, this is
Mhm.
that part when I feel two seemingly opposite things at once, and they're both very true." It's an and. Life is so much about the and.
Yes.
Yeah,
Being comfortable with that, which is hard.
absolutely. Okay, any other questions, comments? It's been such an honor to be with you again. I sincerely hope that this is helpful. If you want more content, my podcast has over 100 very short, hopefully very practical and helpful episodes for you. So give that a listen. It will help.
Yes. And as I mentioned, this is recorded and we will be sharing it on my Trilogy Life. So if you've listened to this and like me, you were taking notes and you want to come back and revisit it, or you want to share it with a neighbor or a friend, please do that, because community is key. So, Teresa, again, thank you so much. Um, as she mentioned, we have her contact information. So, if anyone wants to send her a follow up question or an email, maybe you didn't feel comfortable putting it in the community box, that's totally fine. Just reach out to your lifestyle team and we can help get you oriented. Of
Thank you so much.
course, thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.